everybody, thanks for watching and welcome to another video. Today I'm driving a 1967 Datsun 411 SSS sedan. It's a very unique car. You don't see these things around very often at all. So I want to say thanks to my friend John Lorio for letting me review it. Since he's really into old Datsuns, but he also has a like a BMW 1600 that I'm going to do something on. He has an MR2. So the 411 was a car that Datsun made in the mid to late 60s as a family, kind of small family commuter car. And most of these were sold originally with automatics. Normally, it would have had a 4-speed originally if it was a manual, but this one has a 5-speed. This car was designed by Pininfarina, and so even though it's a a Japanese sedan, it has a kind of a European look to it. It's a really cool looking car. The design, it's got really good proportions. Such a unusual car. I mean, it's a very rare kind of alternative to like a BMW 1600 or a 2002 from the same era. This was a car that came out before the 510. The SSS stands for Super Sport Sedan. Basically, the 510 came out in '68, so it came out the year after they stopped making these 411. So the SSS version of the 411, basically what they did was they took the body and they put the driveline from the Datsun Roadster, which was their sports car from the same period. And so basically it has what's called the R1600. So it's a 1600cc engine with dual SU Hitachi carburetors. And they had to tilt the carbs a little bit to make them fit on the in the engine bay. They also had to route the exhaust system had to be routed through the fender opening on the inside of the engine bay to make it fit, because it's kind of it's a small car and the Roadster packaging was a little bit bigger, so they had to do some finessing. And when this came out, this was considered actually one of the fastest small compact sedans that you could buy. It had 95 horsepower, which was not bad back then. At the time, a BMW 1600 had around 85 horsepower, so this was not a bad little car, for its time. You got to put it in the context of the era, obviously the late 60s, when it came to small economy sedans like this. So the exhaust in the car, it has a custom header and a free flow exhaust. So, but that's about it. It has I believe a performance distributor as well, but it's pretty stock. So it's got basically the original around 95 horsepower. It's a revvy little motor. Makes the same sounds as, like, if you've ever driven a Datsun Roadster, you would feel kind of right at home in this thing, because it has that same sort of sound of a Datsun Roadster 1600, because it's the same engine, obviously. It has the same kind of little carburetor sound and sounds really cool. And these are kind of very durable, kind of thrashy engines that have a lot of character. They kind of feel like British sports cars in a way, like an MGB or a Triumph. So it's got a 5-speed conversion, and what they did was they took a diesel truck bell housing and they put the internals from the Datsun 720 manual. They came in a Datsun 720 sedan, and so they kind of did this hybrid kind of transmission so that it would fit in the small packaging in this car. And it's really, the 5-speed makes it a lot more drivable. Like on the freeway, it just cruises right along. Suspension and chassis have been modified a little bit on this as well. The front end has Roadster competition springs. The rear end has recurved leaf springs. So the rear is a live axle with leaf springs, but they've recurved the rear leaf springs to lower the car at the back. And then of course the front has the Roadster lowering springs as well. This thing runs really good for an old carbureted car. I know that the engine has been rebuilt on it. The shifting is definitely hard to get used to. The gears are kind of like all over the place. They're far away. Obviously once you get used to it, it's fine, but I'm still, third and fifth are way out over here. So this car also has Revolution wheels. It has a set of 14-inch Revolution alloys, which look great on the car, especially with the lowered ride height. And there's just such a period, kind of competition look. He also installed these really cool gauges. It has this period correct rally pack gauges on it, which is these 3 gauges here. There's a tach speedometer and then a triple, fuel, oil, and water temperature over here. Originally, this would have had just a sweeping speedometer and none of these gauges here. So he found that new old stock, and it just looks great. Very European looking. It looks totally period correct. There's a beautiful little gauges. And this has a typical feel of a Datsun, very, very mechanical feeling. The gearbox is really notchy, but it goes into gear really easily. It's light, but it really feels very mechanical. And just all around, this is such a unique car. I mean, the ride is pretty firm, definitely, because of the fact that it's lowered and it has the recurved rear leaf springs. It definitely rolls a bit in corners. Actually, it's not that bad. The seats have zero bolstering, and so you kind of got to hang on to the steering wheel. The steering on the car is pretty light. It doesn't have power steering, but it's still really light. It has a pretty large steering wheel. It has disc brakes in the front and drums on the rear, which is pretty typical for the period. The brakes are, you know, they feel very vintage. And as you get up in speed, actually the car is really drivable. The 5-speed makes a really big difference. You kind of got to keep it floored all the time to maintain your progress. And it just feels so vintage. All right, you guys, well, thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next video. This was a quick one here with this car, so we'll catch you later.